Sorry about that. Having a technical issue today, apparently, with my internet connection. Welcome to Sacred Place Live. I'm Matthew, your host. I'm glad you are able to join me on this third Thursday in Advent. Our theme this week is joy. And we approach it from a different perspective. The text of this week from Isaiah is from a time when the people of Judah who were in exile return to their land. And things are not exactly what they hoped they would be. I think that describes this year for us perfectly well. So, in that mindset, let us read again the text from Jeremiah. The Lord God's Spirit is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release for the captives, and liberation for prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, and a day of vindication from our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for Zion's mourners, to give them a crown in place of ashes, oil of joy in place of mourning, a mantle of praise in place of discouragement. They will be called oaks of righteousness, planted by the Lord to glorify himself. They will rebuild the ancient ruins. They will restore formerly deserted places. They will renew ruined cities, places deserted in generations past. Foreigners will stay and shepherd your sheep, and strangers will be your farmers and vine dressers. You will be called the priests of the Lord, ministers of our God, they will say about you. You will feed on the wealth of nations and fatten yourself on their riches. Instead of shame, their portion will be double. Instead of disgrace, they will rejoice over their share. They will possess a double portion in their land. Everlasting joy will be theirs. I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and dishonesty. I will faithfully give them their wage, and make with them an enduring covenant. Their offspring will be known among the nations, and their descendants among the peoples. All who see them will recognize that they are a people blessed by the Lord. I surely rejoice in the Lord. My heart is full because of my God, because he has clothed me with clothes of victory, wrapped me in a robe of righteousness, like a bridegroom in a priestly crown, and like a bride adorned in jewelry. And the earth puts out its growth, and as a garden grows its seeds, so the Lord God will grow righteousness and praise before all the nations. So let us place ourselves in the footsteps of those who are returning from exile. They return to a land where some have stayed behind, and they don't feel very welcome. Things have changed. The land which they go back to doesn't necessarily feel like home anymore. It's kind of like, for me, having moved away from home 18 years ago, half of my life ago, things are different when I go back to visit. Even things that seem the same, like my favorite restaurants, don't quite taste as good as they used to. I've been assured that it's because the quality has actually changed, not just because my memory is fonder than reality. We have much that has changed in our country and world just this year from the pandemic. Talking about joy doesn't really seem that easy. We won't be gathering with everyone who we would normally gather with, if anyone at all, outside of our home. I don't get to go back to my home in Texas, where my family still is. The idea of home is rich and deep within this text. These words were proclaimed amidst the rubble. Jerusalem was a city that was surrounded by a great wall which no longer stands. The temple has been burned and destroyed. The people have learned to find a place where God can dwell outside of those walls, but that was still their holy place. And it's not a place where they can worship anymore. So, hearing joy proclaimed as a promise and a future, I can imagine that might have been hard to receive, hard to grasp onto, hard to believe. Joy? Amidst all of this? Is that even possible? Joy? Amidst all of this death, which has happened over the last 10, 11 months. Joy, when all of our traditions aren't happening. When we as God's people won't be gathering to raise our candles on Christmas Eve in person. I invite you to do so at home, of course, when we gather on Christmas Eve, but it won't be the same. Yes, it'll be something good and meaningful, but it's not exactly what we hoped for. It's not exactly what we imagined a year ago we'd be doing now. But the year of Jubilee is promised. Excuse me. Let us look at that year of Jubilee just a little bit more. One of the things that I think I left out on Tuesday is that in the year of Jubilee, that 50th year, it was like a year of Sabbath. For whatever reason someone might have sold or lost their property, they return to it. They start life anew. I haven't really researched the details of exactly how that might have worked to understand it better. I find time somewhat lacking these days. But this idea of what the year of Jubilee would have been being promised as what would be rebuilt, that was exciting for these first hearers of these words from Isaiah. This prophecy of an eternal covenant, an everlasting promise. Now that is a place where we can find joy. We know, as we've talked about the past weeks, that the future won't necessarily look like the present. That's good news. The work that God is doing to bring God's kingdom here will change our current reality. Finding joy this holiday season starts maybe in the smallest of ways, of hearing that story again on Christmas Eve and holding on to the promise of what a new life can bring we await expectantly with this hope of peace and a promise of joy. Hold on to that. It's not easy. We will still be mourning all the things which won't happen as we had hoped this year. But this year will end. A new one will begin. And I believe that things will turn around. They may never be exactly as they once were, but we will be joyful as a community again. I invite you to reflect on that and to use this next song as your prayer.
Come, thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free from our fears and sins. Release us, let us find our rest in thee. Israel's strength and consolation, hope of all the earth thou art, desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. Oh, 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 oh. Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. Now thy gracious kingdom bring, by thine own eternal Spirit rule in all our hearts alone. By thine all-sufficient merit raise us to thy glorious throne. Oh, 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 oh,
I invite you to join me again next week on Tuesday for Sacred Place Live, when we enjoy that final theme of Advent: love. But before that, we bring back in the candles. Make sure you can see all four of them. There we go. We light the first candle of hope, that we might find hope in the ways we resist the compromises asked of us by the empire, which oppresses us and makes us captive. We light the second candle for peace, praying for a peace that God can bring through healing and restoration, not overpowering and conquering. And we light the candle of joy, a joy found in the promises of what can and will be, not necessarily what is now. May you be filled with the light of each of these candles in the coming week, or just a week from Christmas Eve, when we will gather together on Zoom at 5:45 for our Christmas Eve by candlelight. Like I said, I'll be back here Tuesday for our only live stream of the week at 5:30, and you're always invited to Sacred Place together, our time of community, when we see each other face to face while distanced by our screens. All of that information is on our website at yoursacredplace.org. May you hold on to the joy found this time of year, especially when it might be the hardest to find. This is your sacred place.